So if you're a Rainbow Six lore fan like myself, Ubisoft have just made a change which has sort of changed everything we thought we knew about the lore when it comes to the timeline. And now, I've already made a video saying that the writers of Rainbow Six Siege's lore are in a bit of a tricky position because they are building a story which came from multiple single player games in the past, and the benefit of telling a story with a single player game is that you can have set dates in said story, operators can age for example, and you have that starting and end point for your own story so you know what you're working with. So a large issue with Rainbow Six Siege's lore, purely just down to the fact of the game's model, that there is no endpoint in sight. The writers cannot develop this story knowing that it is going to end at this point and it's going to be shipped as a final product with a beginning, middle, and end of the narrative. So this is when the whole conversation of dates in the Rainbow Six Siege universe and the progression of time gets extremely messy. So not looking at previous titles, there are at least 2 dates confirmed in Siege's lore universe of when stuff takes place. The first of which would be 2012, which is the year where Gerald Morris defects from Rainbow, kills Daniel Bogart, and of course places Kure Galanos into her wheelchair, which eventually leads her to become Scopos. That is a concrete date in 2012 because we know this because the cinematic purposely shows us the date 2012. So that is concrete fact that this event took place in 2012. The next date we can purely assume as fact is 2015 as the reactivation of Rainbow and the birth of this brand new squad. As far as I'm aware, there isn't any piece in universe specifically saying that this was 2015. The only thing we're running with here is the fact that this is when Rainbow Six Siege came out, and judging by the fact that, you know, Deimos defected in 2012 and everything, it makes sense in universe for this roster to be activated in 2015. It just makes sense. But after that is when everything got a bit confusing. We just assumed that the rest of the game and the continuation of content and the story went with the exact same flow of time that happens with us in real life. If a season released in 2018, for example, in universe, those operators were recruited in 2018. That's how we just assumed it. That was the best way of explaining everything, and although there is no concrete proof, a lot of it makes sense, especially with the introduction of operators and the advancement of technology as well. And we felt like we sort of got our confirmation of time going in real time to our real world when we got the comic book for Operation Deadly Omen, where it had a dossier of Ash, and not only did it show her age, it also showed her year of birth. So using a little bit of quick math, adding her age to her year of birth landed us at 2023. Now, this caused a heap of issues. To begin with, Ash was always originally stated to have been born in 1983. Her age has always stated to have been like 32, 33, so if she was actually aging, which a lot of operators don't technically age, or it's something they just try not talk about because it's one of those things you have to overlook with a live service story, which me personally, I don't like, but I understand why the writers want it to be that way, and I'll explain that in a minute. But if this was truly meant to take place in 2023, Ash at this point should have been roughly in her 40s or, you know, late 39. But it seems like there was a mistake here because instead of aging her in the age process, they actually kept her the same age because there's this whole thing about operators not aging. Again, we'll talk about it. But to compensate for the fact that she's still apparently 33, they then changed her birthday 7 years later instead of making her 7 years older. But if you now head to the media section of Rainbow Six Siege's website and download this comic book, you can actually see that they've completely removed the year. It just has the age now. So what we originally used this as information for was that we could say that, okay, this definitely takes place in 2023, so everything that's been happening in the game has been progressing with real time. Because since there was a set birth year and a set current age, adding them together gave us 2023. It was hard to dispute. Now that there is no age here, however, that completely changes everything because these entire Deimos events could be happening in 2020, for example. It doesn't have to be 2023 and 2024 anymore. There's no proof that the events which are happening with Deimos and a lot of stuff before that happen in the corresponding years. It happened in real life. So for all we know, Rainbow Six Siege's lore could actually be happening in 2019, 2020. We don't know anymore. Now, let me explain to you why the writers are in a really weird position like this and why it's technically in their best interest not to show date progression and especially not to highlight operator age progression. And that is because what if Siege goes on for another 10 or if it does 20 years and they want to continue that story? If operators aged in real time, half of them would be out of service by then, and you wouldn't be able to use them in any lore. And as well as this, what if the day they finally decide that it's time for Siege to end and they start making more Rainbow Six titles, where do they go from the story there? What if they want to use all these operators in more stories? What if they want to progress the story even more? Due to the story being live service, it does put them in quite a weird position if they decide to age and date with real time, and it's something that we'd probably never know until they give us an official timeline, which is something I would love. I will say I think the Deimos arc and the whole Keyres Legion arc does give them a very good opportunity, because with like the Stadium era of the lore, for example, it was established that that was a yearly thing, so it made that era of the lore age with the years, and you know, it didn't really give them much freedom there. But with the whole Deimos thing, it actually seems like this is only happening over the space of a few months for all we know. I mean, look how closely a lot of the lore, especially over year 8 and year 9, happened. I mean, in the year 8 lore, it went from Harry dying, Rainbow retaliating by going on Deimos's plane and him escaping, but they found the tracker to Brazil, then they found Fenrir, and then Fenrir joined Rainbow, and then they got the intel that they were going to attack Tower, and then from the Tower attack, it led them to Portugal, and there they found that Emerald Plains attack was imminent, and then they deployed a team there. Like, a lot of the stuff which happened in year 8's lore could have very simply happened over the space of 3 months maximum. A lot of that doesn't have to take place over an entire year, so I genuinely think with the current version of the lore, the writers do have an opportunity to really slow everything down, and they can start making lore arcs which happen over the space of a year happen over 2 months at most, and this can then really give them a lot of freedom, because even if the game goes on for like another 10 years, for example, if each lore throughout the year is only a few handful of months, they can actually begin to start aging operators in universe if they want to, because that would mean in, let's say, 15 years time in our real lives, which is crazy to think about, because I'll be, what, in 15 years I'll be 37 years old. God, can you guys imagine me if I'm here at the age of 37 being like, hey guys, here's some R6 lore updates? But genuinely hear me out, let's say the game goes on for another 15 years and they're continuing to do this narrative. If they start to write the story in a way where the lore every year kind of only progresses every few months, but don't get me wrong, there's still a lot happening every single in-universe month, because there's a lot of action, Rainbow are on their feet, there's a lot of combat. It's not like they're resting for most of this time. It's still going to be as much lore as we're currently getting, maybe even more. But let's say that, you know, it happens at 2 months per year. That means if this game goes on for another 15 years, that means that every operator would age by a maximum of 2 years at that time. And that would be counting if we're starting today as 2025, where in universe it could be 2022 or 2023. So I think removing Ash's birth year from this comic book was a good step in the right direction, and I understand the sort of limitations the writing team have, but I genuinely think if they can, in a natural way, slow down the progression of time in the lore, make the events of each year happening over a handful of months at a time, they can really prolong their story without limiting them, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying like they're dragging the story purposely just because the game is gonna go on for a longer period of time. It would be the same level and the same amount of stuff that would happen in that universe, but just have it happen in a quicker period of in real life time. Because let's be honest, a lot of this Deimos stuff, Rainbow would be pretty crap if all of that was happening over 2 years. You know, I would expect the Deimos stuff to be happening over a handful of months. So I completely understand the narrative decision to not focus on age, not focus on the progression of time. But on the other hand, I definitely think there is a way that they can start working all of this into it. And if they do start to slow down in-universe months and they establish that, hey, these events happened over this period of months, these events happened over this period of years, you can actually get that creative freedom to start aging operators. Now, that doesn't mean, you know, updating their default skin every year, start giving them all wrinkles. But in universe, Ash can go from the age of 33 to 40. You know, Kaid can get a bit older, so can Sam Fisher, but still to the point where they are understandable, although they are getting older and everything, but to a point that, you know, it'll bring us to an in real life point for us by the year 2030 or something like that, where we would hopefully expecting Ubisoft to be branching Rainbow Six outside of Siege and doing more narrative-driven games. But yeah, I understand the decision which is made by the writers. I think removing Ash's birthday from this dossier makes a lot of sense. But if I was in charge of everything, which probably thank God I'm not, because I'd probably cock everything up if we're being honest, I would personally slow down the flow of time. I would establish that in-universe events take place over a shorter period and it doesn't actually age with our in real life, timeline. And I think that then gives the writers more creative freedom to express their characters even more, to make their characters age even more, to have more character progression. I think overall that would improve a lot of stuff about the lore, because giving your writers more freedom is always a good thing and you always see benefits from that. But yeah, went off on a little tangent there. A quick too long didn't read. They removed Ash's birth year, which was incorrect from one of the comic books. We now don't know when anything takes place, if we're being honest, in the timeline, which might be for the better. And hopefully we have to wait and see what Ubisoft officially state as official points in the timeline and stuff like that. And I also gave my opinion about how you could maybe slow down the flow of time a little bit and actually have operators aging in a manageable way. So yeah, be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this. Drop a like on this video if you did enjoy. Subscribe if you are new. Catch you all later. I love you all. Stay safe. Peace.